The night air in Riverton carried a strange silence. Streetlights flickered above cracked sidewalks as Ezra Quinn walked home with a paper bag tucked under one arm. At 74, he moved slower, but with quiet confidence. The former firefighter had spent most of his life pulling strangers from burning buildings. Now, he spent his retirement checking on the neighbors no one else remembered. He passed the corner of East Elm and Birch when he heard raised voices. At first, he thought it was just another late-night argument. But then came a frightened plea. "I'm just walking home, man. I didn't do anything." Ezra stopped. Under the glow of a broken light, a boy, barely 16, stood with his back against a gas station wall. Two men in dark clothing closed in on him. They looked like plainclothes, officers, but nothing about their approach felt right. The taller one jabbed a finger into the boy's chest, while the shorter one blocked any chance of escape. "Why'd you run?" one barked. "I didn't. I swear I didn't run. I just turned the corner fast. Please, I'm not carrying anything." Ezra stepped forward, slow and steady. "Evening, officers," he said, keeping his voice calm. "This young man looks scared out of his mind. Is everything all right?" The two men turned quickly. One flashed a badge, too quickly for Ezra to read. "Keep moving, old man," the tall one snapped. "This doesn't concern you." Ezra didn't flinch. "It does when I see someone getting cornered. I know this kid. He bags groceries at Jenkins Mart on Saturdays. Doesn't look like a threat to me." The boy's eyes flicked toward Ezra, wide and hopeful. "I said walk away," the short one growled. His hand moved toward something inside his coat. "I'm not interfering," Ezra replied gently. "Just asking questions. Maybe I can help calm things down." But the taller man stepped forward. "You're interfering with police work." Ezra raised both hands, showing empty palms. "Not looking for trouble. Just don't want this to escalate." Without warning, the first hit came fast. A shove to the chest that knocked Ezra against the wall. His bag tumbled to the pavement, groceries spilling onto the sidewalk. The boy shouted, "Leave him alone!" Ezra tried to speak, but a second blow landed in his ribs, sharp and cruel. The shorter man twisted his arm behind his back and forced him to his knees. Ezra gasped from the sudden shock of pain. "You're under arrest," one of them snarled, "for obstruction and resisting." "I'm not resisting," Ezra wheezed, but the next punch cut his voice short. His head cracked against the brick as he was dragged toward the alley. Somewhere in the shadows, a small light blinked, the lens of a phone camera watching silently. "Dump him," the taller one muttered. They dragged Ezra's barely conscious body behind the dumpster, out of view. His lips split open as his cheek hit the concrete. He tasted blood. Everything faded into darkness. The last thing he heard before losing consciousness was a voice that said, "Nobody's gonna miss some broke old man." At Riverton General Hospital, the monitors beeped steadily beside Ezra's broken body. Bruises covered his face, 3 ribs were fractured, and a breathing tube helped him cling to life. A nurse named Daya stood outside the ICU room, hands clenched around a clipboard. She had seen her share of victims, but this was different. Ezra Quinn wasn't just any man. He ran the local youth fire academy, helped kids off the street, and built ramps for elderly neighbors who couldn't afford them. He didn't deserve this. She pulled her phone from her pocket and called a number she found in the clinic's old emergency contact records. It rang twice before a voice answered, gruff and unfamiliar. "Who is this?" he asked. "My name's Daya Ramos," she replied. "I'm a nurse at Riverton General. I'm calling about Ezra Quinn." The line went silent. "He's in critical condition. He was beaten by officers. They left him in an alley. Another long pause. "I thought you should know," she said softly. "They don't think he'll make it." When the call ended, the man on the other end stared out at snow-covered pine trees, his jaw clenched. He hadn't been called Quinn in years. But tonight, something long buried inside him began to stir. He opened a metal case under the bed. Inside lay a folded flag, an old photo, and a service badge. He ran his fingers over the edges of the picture. Ezra smiling, proud. Without hesitation, he grabbed his coat and strapped his travel bag across his back. It was time to go home. Keon's boots hit the sidewalk like distant thunder. His return to Riverton was silent, but the tension in his shoulders made it clear. He wasn't here for peace. 8 years had passed since he left. Nothing looked the same, yet nothing felt new. The corner store near Maple still had the crooked sign. The church where his father used to preach stood closed behind rusting gates. But new condos towered. Nearby, their polished glass a mirror reflecting the fading edges of the neighborhood. He walked the hospital corridor with precision. Nurses paused mid-step, sensing something different about him. The ICU door creaked as he pushed it open. There, surrounded by wires and machines, lay Ezra. His face swollen, his breath shallow, his spirit flickering like a dying flame. Keon didn't speak right away. He sat beside the bed and studied the man who had raised him with tough love and deep faith. Daya entered quietly, holding a tablet and a flash drive. "You must be Keon," she said softly. He nodded, eyes fixed on Ezra's battered form. "I work night shifts. I've known your father since I was a teenager. He taught CPR at our school. Saved my cousin's life once." She hesitated before handing him the drive. "This has footage my friend Tarek took. It shows more than what the news aired." Keon accepted it without comment. "They're covering it up," she added. "They edited the original video. Made him look like the aggressor." Keon's jaw clenched. "Where's the kid?" "Tarek? He's laying low. The cops scared him. Said if he talks, his family might face consequences." "I want to speak to him," Keon said. "Good luck," she replied. "No one trusts anyone. Anymore?" Later that evening, Keon walked to Ezra's house, key still working in the lock after all these years. The air inside smelled of old books, worn wood, and memories that refused to die. The walls were lined with photographs of fire crews, church picnics, and family reunions. In his father's study, dust had settled over handwritten journals and community flyers. Keon flipped one open. Inside were notes about zoning meetings, names of families who'd been evicted, and quiet warnings about strange men showing up with offers and threats. The patterns weren't random. That night, Keon visited the old youth center 2 blocks down. There he found Mira Quinn leaning over a stack of legal documents, her hair tied in a knot, blazer sleeves rolled up. She looked up slowly. Well, look who rose from the dead," she said dryly. "You got taller," Keon replied, "and you got quieter." They hadn't spoken in years, not since their mother's funeral. Mira had stayed. She had carried the burden of a crumbling community while Keon disappeared into the wilderness. "He's hanging on," he said. "I know," she answered, emotion hidden behind steel. "I've been at the hospital every day." They sat across from each other at a dusty table. "I've been trying to build a case," Mira said. "The officers involved have passed complaints, all buried. The developer buying up half the East. Side? Nova Delta. They fund the police union. Their CEO used to run military contracts. Sound familiar? Kian's eyes narrowed. Colt Mercer. You know him? He was my CO. Afghanistan. Psychological warfare. Mira stared at him. Then this is more than property. It's control. He's using the same tactics here, Kian muttered. Destabilize. Replace. Profit. Suddenly, someone knocked at the back door. A lean teenager stood there, hoodie pulled tight, eyes darting. I shouldn't be here, he whispered. But your dad helped me. I owe him. Tariq? Mira asked. He nodded. Kian stepped forward. You took the video? Yeah. My phone's been glitching ever since. I think someone tried to hack it. I backed up the full file. It shows everything, from the start. Mira retrieved a laptop. Tariq connected a drive. They watched in silence as the footage played. Ezra, approaching calmly, speaking gently, clearly unarmed. The officers struck without cause. The teenager ran. The camera caught every word, every blow, every groan. No edits, no distortions. This changes everything, Mira said. Only if someone listens, Kian replied. Tariq looked terrified. They said if I went public, my mom could lose her job. She works at City Hall. You did the right thing, Kian told him. We'll protect you. As the boy left, Kian turned to his sister. If Mercer's behind this, it won't stop with Dad. This is a war. Then we fight smarter, Mira said. This time, with facts. Kian nodded slowly. The soldier was back, but this time he wouldn't need a rifle. The truth was the weapon now. Rain swept across Riverton's cracked streets as Kian stood beneath the rusting awning of Ezra's church. The paint had faded, the bricks were chipped, but the building still held something sacred. Inside, memories clung to the walls, baptisms, funerals, wedding vows, and sermons that had once shaken souls. Now, it sat abandoned, quietly resisting the tides of development. Mira arrived minutes later with a manila folder clutched to her chest. Her umbrella barely held back the downpour. I pulled property records and zoning permits from the city. Archive, she said, passing the folder to Kian. They show a pattern. Nova Delta buys property 2 weeks after a code violation, always after police contact. Kian flipped through the documents. Each page told a story. Families forced out. Homes condemned. Businesses shuttered. They weren't just clearing buildings. They were erasing lives. It's not random, Mira added. Every targeted block connects back to urban redevelopment initiative maps. They're clearing entire communities, Kian muttered, just like we used to do in combat zones. He paused at a blueprint showing future development plans. The community center, the fire station, even the church. They were marked for demolition. A note scribbled in the corner read, "Holdouts resisting. Apply increased pressure." Mira noticed, his clenched jaw. Is it him? It's Mercer, Kian confirmed. Same strategies. Different battlefield. They didn't hear the door open until the hinges creaked. Daya stepped inside, soaked but determined. I found something, she said, pulling a folded envelope from her coat. Ezra gave this to my uncle a month ago. My uncle used to work for code enforcement before he got laid off. He hid it in his desk. Kian unfolded the paper. Inside were names, badge numbers, and payment logs. Beside each entry was a short note. Raided after refusal. Offered buyout. Eviction pending. He documented everything, Mira whispered. They thought he was just an old man with a Bible. Kian stared at the final line. If anything happens to me, Follow the money. Trust no one in uniform. He turned to Daya. Thank you. This helps connect the dots. There's more, she said. One of the officers, Jace Renner, he's been spotted outside the hospital every night. Watching. Not visiting. Just waiting? Kian's eyes narrowed. Send me his photo. Mira pulled out her phone and started searching court records. Renner's had complaints before. Brutality, intimidation, falsified reports. All dismissed. Kian took a deep breath. We need someone inside the department. A whistleblower. They don't exist, Mira replied. Anyone honest got pushed out years ago. I'll find one, he said. Everyone has a line. That evening, Kian returned to Ezra's house. He sat at the kitchen table, the folder open in front of him. He traced the maps with a red pen, circling zones affected by violent incidents. Every circle led back to one name, Colt Mercer. Mira joined him with coffee in hand. We can't take him down with paperwork. He's too protected. We expose the system, not just the man, Kian replied. Create pressure. Make the public see. Mira nodded slowly. I've been working on a digital case file. Timelines, statements, property flips, leaked footage. If we release it properly, it might go viral. Call it the Quinn file, Kian said. People love names with weight. They worked through the night, compiling every piece of evidence. Daya returned later with files from Ezra's old safe, hidden under floorboards in his office. There were letters from neighbors, recorded conversations, and even a voice memo from Ezra himself. If you're hearing this, the message began, then I didn't make it. But the fight's not over. These streets raised us. We don't leave them behind. Kian paused the recording, hands tightening. The next morning, Tariq arrived quietly at the back door. He looked nervous, glancing over his shoulder. They threatened my cousin, he said. Said if I talked again, she'd lose her scholarship. You don't have to come forward, Mira assured him. We'll blur your face, change your voice. Tariq nodded. Okay, just promise me one thing. What's that? Kiani asked. Don't let them win. Kian met his gaze. We won't. Later that day, Kian walked alone to the diner near the precinct. He waited for one man, Lieutenant Ray Keegan, once Ezra's friend, now demoted after pushing back on precinct politics. Keegan arrived 15 minutes late, wearing plain clothes and weary eyes. Kian slid a folder across the table. You've seen this happening? Keegan hesitated. What do you want from me? Testify. Quietly. Off record first. Then decide. Keegan looked at the contents and sighed. They're going to kill this city. Then help us stop them. Keegan looked up. You've got 2 days. After that, I'm a ghost. Outside, the rain stopped, but thunder still lingered. The sun rose over Riverton with a strange quiet. For the first time in weeks, the city didn't feel asleep. It felt like it was holding its breath. In the living room of Ezra's house, lights hummed from laptops and phones as Kian, Mira, and Daya prepared for what was coming. Papers, hard drives, flash drives, and handwritten logs were neatly stacked. The truth had weight, and it was ready to be seen. Kian stood near the window, watching volunteers tape flyers to poles and hand out cards with a single phrase, "The Quinn File, tonight at 7 p.m. At exactly 6:45 p.m., Mira checked the livestream settings. One final time. Multiple platforms were loaded, all synced through mirrored connections. Scope, a mysterious ally from Kian's military past, had secured their digital routes, rerouting through international servers to avoid takedowns. Ezra sat nearby in a recliner, still weak but alert. His eyes, once tired, now burned with purpose. "You, sure you're ready for this?" Keon asked. Ezra nodded slowly. "The truth doesn't need me strong. It just needs me present." When the clock struck 7, the screen lit up with Mira's face. Her voice was steady, calm, and without fear. "My name is Mira Quinn. I am a civil rights attorney, a daughter, and a resident of Riverton. What you're about to see is not an isolated incident. This is not just about my father. It's about a system built to erase people like him." As she spoke, the screen cut to clips of the unedited footage. Ezra approaching calmly, the teen trembling, officers lashing out, no resistance, just violence. "We've uncovered a coordinated plan," Mira continued. "Nova Delta, in partnership with local enforcement and corrupt city officials, has executed a quiet campaign of forced displacement. Residents were intimidated. Businesses were shuttered. Entire blocks were emptied under pressure. They showed maps, permit timelines, internal memos, payment transfers, and badge logs. Daya's screen flipped to Ezra's journal, handwritten, heartfelt, undeniable. Then came Tariq's testimony, face obscured, voice altered, but words clear and strong. "I ran because I was told to. But he, Ezra, stood there when no one else would." Then Keon stepped into the frame. For a moment, he said nothing, only looked into the camera. "My name is Keon Quinn. I served under Commander Colt Mercer in Afghanistan. I watched him manipulate villages for power, and now he's doing it here." Photos of Mercer appeared, along with communications linking him directly to Nova Delta. One message read, "If Quinn's father won't sell, make it difficult. We need that land," Keon continued. "This isn't about safety or growth. It's about profit, and they've used police officers to make it happen." The final piece was Lieutenant Keegan's hidden testimony, audio only. He listed incidents he witnessed, orders he questioned, and officers who bragged about cleaning up blocks. It was quiet, damning, and clear. The stream ran for 45 minutes. Comments poured in by the thousands. People watched from churches, cafes, shelters, and schools. At minute 46, the power in Ezra's neighborhood shut off, but the backup stream didn't stop. Scope's voice crackled through the group chat. "They're trying, but it's too late." Across the city, local stations picked up the feed. National journalists reposted segments. Hashtags surged. The Quinn file trended globally. By morning, public outrage had exploded. Protesters gathered outside the precinct. Community leaders called for investigations. Retired officers came forward. City Hall held an emergency meeting behind closed doors. And Mercer? He vanished. Warrants were issued by noon. 2 officers were taken into custody. Internal Affairs launched a full-scale review. The mayor announced a partnership with federal investigators to examine Nova Delta's contracts. At home, Ezra sat at the window, wrapped in a blanket, watching neighbors gather in the street with candles and signs. One banner read, "We are still here." Mira knelt beside his chair, tears in her eyes. "You did this," she whispered. "No," Ezra replied softly. "We did it together." Keon stood behind them, arms crossed, gaze fixed on the street. For years, he had run from ghosts. Now he had faced them and won. Not with bullets, not with vengeance, but with the one thing they never expected him to bring back: the truth. That night, as the lights of Riverton flickered back to life, the city felt different. Not fixed, not healed, but awake. And the name Quinn no longer meant just a man in a hospital bed. It meant resistance. It meant legacy. It meant hope.